hold hands and close your eyes. It's midnight, and you're listening to the Ghost Story Guys. Welcome to the Ghost Story Guys. I'm Brennan Storr.
I'm Paul Bestall.
And this is a show where we talk about spooks, specters, and all the other things watching us from the shadows beyond the campfire. Some conversations only make sense after the sun has set, and this is most definitely one. Thanks for tuning in. This is episode number 195, and we're coming to you from that tiny mountain cabin you dream about, but can never quite reach. Now, Paul, mystery guest, I have a very important question for you that you did not know was coming. Do you agree that I Melt With You by Modern English is the platonic ideal of the 80s pop song? And if not, why are you so wrong?
No.
Why are you so wrong, Paul? I love you, but you are mistaken.
I've got virtually every great pop song of the 1980s on vinyl, and I don't own that, and that's the answer.
You're like the judge in Blood Meridian. If I do not know of it, it may not exist. It does not have my permission.
It's not as good as Foreigner Urgent, straight off the bat.
Oh, all right, Mr. Guest, Mom and Dad are going to fight for a second. Just chill. It's a whole thing here.
And that's before I even dive into Depeche Mode or Duran Duran's catalogue, Brennan. What kind of crazy statement are you trying to make there?
Look, Paul, I bought a lovely bottle of Mezcal this afternoon, and I was driving home, and that came on the radio, and I thought, it really is. It's the perfect example. Maybe not the best. I'm not saying it's the best, but it's like the perfect example of what an 80s pop song should sound like. It immediately takes you right back to a time and place that, even if you weren't there, because I wasn't, I think I Melt With You came out in 83. That's when I was born. It just puts in your mind a place and a vibe. And I love that.
I get that. I must admit, I remember when we were in Florida many years ago, and we'd found a wonderful local 80s station, which was called 101.5 The Point,
nice.
Live from Orlando. And we were driving, and it was a beautiful autumn evening. The sun was setting, and we were just driving along a stretch of highway out from Orlando back to where we were staying. And Billy Idol's Eyes Without a Face came on. And I've always been a Billy Idol fan, but I think sometimes a certain song in a certain environment just takes it to a different level. And I literally thought I was in a John Hughes film for about 20 minutes. It just changed the whole dynamic in how you felt about the song. So I know what you mean. You're wrong about the song, but I know what you mean.
Well, we're going to have to go for a tiebreaker here. We have our guest on this episode, a guest storyteller, Sinead Hanna, host, Woo! Or one of the hosts of the fabulous Poisoner's Cabinet podcast. Sinead, welcome to the Ghost Story Guys. Tell me why I'm right or you're off the show.
Obviously, you're right.
Fantastic.
There's no other words for it. You're if you think you're right, you're right. Others may disagree.
My wife uses that tactic.
You can stick to that. Yeah, that does sound like that's a great passive aggressive line, isn't it? Just like, well, if you think you're right,
good luck to you.
I won't be changing your mind. Is your wife Irish by any chance? Or my entire family? The great 80s, quintessential 80s songs. I mean, part of me, just the child in me wanted to jump out with Especially For You by Kylie and Jason. Because that'll transport you back to your youth in the 80s. But it probably would be Depeche Mode, I think, for me. Enjoy the Silence. I think that's a great song, and it's very 80s. But I don't know the one you said, Bren. I'm sorry.
Welcome to my new show, An Angry Bald Man Tells Ghost Stories by Himself in the
Dark. Tells people they're wrong about music. That could work. I mean, sure, there's plenty of white guy podcasts that are like that. Anyway,
I think this
the world need another one of them. No, but somebody's
won't be stopped.
Somebody's doing it as we speak, Sinead.
And they're making more money than all of us, Paul, and it makes me sad.
Oh, well, at least we've got our integrity, and that's what really matters when we're starving.
Yeah, I keep trying to eat this integrity. Keep trying to spread some integrity on my toast. It's not helping. So, anyways.
But hello, anyway.
Sinead,
hi.
Yes.
Hi, Sinead.
Welcome to the Ghost Story Guys. We're happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, us as the Poisoner's Cabinet I'm representing today. But just me, yeah. Love the show. Love a ghost story. You guys have been going for about longer than we have as well. So it's actually lovely to be on the show.
I was actually wondering that because, it occurred to me when we were talking on Instagram that basically as long as I've been doing this, I seem to recall you guys being there too. So we must have started roughly around the same time.
I think there was this sort of time period. I mean, we started in 2020 and it wasn't because of the pandemic. It wasn't. It was in the February of that year, and we'd sort of heard rumblings, and Nick and I, my co-host, decided, okay, well, let's do this. We're very good friends with the wonderful Emma from Real Life Ghost Stories.
Of course.
You guys know as well. I had lunch with her today, and she had already started. And then we kind of got this inkling of, oh, should we try this? And Emma's very supportive and was like, do it, go. There's no competition here. Go. Which is great advice. But yeah, I think there was a few shows that sort of started around then. Some started as a result of the horrors of 2020.
Yeah.
But I remember you guys being there at the start and kind of that circle and that kind of network and reaching out and sort of doing those shares and being, the people who were kind to you matter the most in the beginning.
Cool. I'm glad. I have very little memory of that time, but I'm glad we were not. I was not a.
Wow, thanks. Okay, yeah, that's the last time I bare my soul on this show. It's fine. I wouldn't remember me either. It's fine.
Like I said, to me, you've always been there. So it's just you're this permanent, this permanent fixture in the landscape. So I'm like, yeah, Poisoners Cabin. They've been there because we started January 2017.
Yes, yeah, you've been going for a while.
And I was like, no, to me, you guys have always been there. And like again, and I think what you do is so cool because it's such a very rich vein that I don't know that a lot of people tap. Really interesting historical murders, and to mix it the way you do with cocktails. As a booze hound myself, I really enjoy that.
Yeah, that was what we wanted to start out with, and as ever, anyone who starts a podcast, some people start it with the blind knowledge deep within their soul of like, I will be heard. Me and Nick did not start in that way. We thought we want to share something. We think we'd be good at it. Probably 5 people will listen. But we wanted to build a very specific format, and we thought we'll do true crime. We only wanted to do historic cases. The madder, the better, because this is going to be comedic in its style, but historical. Let's delve into the archives because you can have so much fun with it. Closer to home, you can get a bit tricky when talking about true crime. There's completely a place for it. But because we were going to be comedic, we were like, oh, no, we'll go there. But the other thing we love was cocktails, and Nick is a great mixologist. And so that's what we've been combining for over 200 episodes now, of mixing up cocktails inspired by the tales that we tell and expanding out into crazier, weirder stories throughout history. As long as there's a bit of crime in there or someone's done something wrong, then we'll take it. And
what I love too is you guys keep finding ways to keep it fresh. Even when you're talking about Canterbury, where you're located, right?
Yes,
There was a bit you had on a recent episode. It just killed me. It was you guys were joking about the waking bell that used to get everyone up at 4 a.m. and in the tower. And what a horror show that sounded like. And then it became the wanking bell. And I tell you, man, I was driving back and forth between getting groceries and home, and I died. I had to pull over. I actually had to pull over for a minute.
I'm glad it affected you in the same way that it affected us as well, because I was writing that. Sometimes Nick and I alternate the stories each week. And that's why we do history, because you can find those tidbits and you can run with them. And it's true. In Canterbury, it's a medieval city. It's historic. It's a beautiful place, very important place in England. But yeah, it did have is clock tower, and everyone had to get up at 4 a.m., which blew Nick's mind. I was like, no, the servants have to get up, and everyone has to know to get up and rise and work, because you have to work the hours that you have to actually earn a living and to till the land and to serve the church. But just as I was writing it down, the waking bell, and I was just like, don't say it, 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 don't say it. As soon as on the show going, wouldn't it be funny if it was the wanking bell? Yeah. And then it just goes, and it's like, yep, pulling on that, yelling. Everyone's awake. Everyone has to see. Yeah.
Keeping time. It was.
Keeping time. Which is important for some people.
Rhythm is important.
Exactly. I mean, the Archbishop had, the biggest had Bell Harry, obviously, up in the cathedral there. So he was really going for it. You ever hear those bells go? It's like, whoa, gives you a whole new perspective about what's happening at Mass.
Well, I mean, yeah, but. Oh, all right, moving on.
Oh, we're going to hell. Well, that's the wanking section covered. Yeah.
Is it, though? Are we done? I don't know that we're done.
I was going to say go hard or go home, but I think we're already there.
Oh, God. There it is. There's the show.
All right. Well, on this episode, you'll be very sad to know we're not talking about mass, wanking, or really 80s pop, although I'm sure all those things will find their way in. On this episode, we're going to be telling stories centered in and around waterfalls. in a tribute to the great TLC, because let's at the hell, we're dating ourselves already on this episode. Why not date ourselves a little bit further?
Mustn't chase them.
No, that's what I'm told.
No, that's the one takeaway.
Not even out the side of your best friend's ride. Now, I know that's not the same song. I don't care. It's the only other song I know. We're going to have to deal with it, guys. All right. Well, before we get to those stories, though, we got to thank our patrons.
This one's for the patrons.
Patrons, we could not do what we do without you. So thank you. Thank you, thank you. For real, guys, every single person who downloads a Ghost Story, guys, you help make us who we are. But without our patrons, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube subscribers, we truly could not make this work. Advertising is a lousy way to make a living. It is our subscribers who allow this to keep going. So while we'd like to thank every single one of you, we would especially like to thank our latest subscribers. They are
Lesser Ghoul,
Brianna Hunt-Halver,
Alice,
Becky Campbell. Hey, Becky. I know Becky personally.
Miffy Doodlebug,
Kathleen Lewis,
Derek Sutton,
Jack Jackson,
and Kate.
Again, thank you so much from the bottom of our terrible hearts. We cannot tell you how much we appreciate your support. And while we'll wait till the end of the show to tell you all about the cool stuff you get when you subscribe, we will say you get an ad-free feed. Who doesn't want that? Ads suck. You can also have your name read out in the Ghost Force shoutouts, which will be coming at the very end of the show in the C segment, so listen out for that. To get all that, head to patreon.com/ghoststoryguys. That's patreon.com/ghoststoryguys, or sign up to Ghost Story Guys Premium via Apple Podcasts or YouTube. All right, one last thing before we head off the cliff into the world of Waterfalls. Shout out to our composer, Rainy Days for Ghosts. Rainy Days for Ghosts is a project of film journalist and musician Harper Smith. You can find more of Harper's work at rainydaysforghosts.bandcamp.com or by searching for Rainy Days for Ghosts on streaming platforms everywhere. It is that time. We're going to take a quick break and be right back with stories of haunted waterfalls.
The Philippine banshee. My story involves a close friend from the office who I'm going to refer to as Rowena. Rowena is what one would consider very sensitive to the subtle world. I, on the other hand, don't consider myself sensitive, but do acknowledge that there have been times where I could smell things that weren't there, like incense, flowers, or some awful putrid smell. At other times, I've heard unexplainable noises and sounds. When this particular story happened, we were out on a 2-day team bonding activity on a remote mountain farm here in the Philippines. The farm was a quaint collection of huts spread out along the gentle slopes of the mountain. On the eastern side was a river, and onwards to the south behind the huts was the forest. Upon arrival, we had a bit of time before the morning activity, so we explored the grounds. One of the first things I noticed were the dark, humanoid totems situated on tall wooden columns around the place. I saw one by the river gate, and then a few more scattered in the back of the farm, going to the wooded area. In the afternoon, we got more free time, so a few of us, including Rowena, went upriver to check out the waterfalls. The river wasn't too deep, so we could trek and wade across it. The trek upriver was fun, all of us talking amongst ourselves, but I remember the rocky riverbanks giving up a deep vibe of foreboding and desolation. At some point, I surmised that the waterfall could be too far for me, so I decided to give up and get back to the farm. I went back to enter through the river gate and again noted seeing one of the totems perched on top of a column, as if standing guard. After dinner back at the farm, a few of us decided to play board games and talk over a few bottles of beer. We love board games, so we didn't pack it in until 1 a.m. There were 7 or 8 of us staying in the same hut, some sleeping on beds, the rest on sleeping mats. The hut was a wooden house on a slope with the north side on stilts. There were 3 beds parallel to each other and a loft with a few more sleeping mats in it. Rowena chose the farthest bed, Kevin in the middle, while I took the bed nearest the door. The rest took the loft and some slept on mats on the floor. There was no air conditioner and the windows were quite large. Overall, the hut was airy and well ventilated by the cool night air. I hadn't been sleeping long when I was awakened by a high-pitched sound. This being the Philippines, it could just have been an echo of someone singing out in the mountains, and so I waited a few minutes to see if another song began. It didn't. The sound continued. It had an ethereal quality to it, a soft wail that carried a feeling of longing and anguish, seeming to emanate from the earth and woods themselves. Oddly, it still felt like I could pinpoint the direction it came from, which to me felt like the singer was walking back and forth in an arc, not coming nearer or farther, always equidistant from my point of hearing. The thought of it approaching scared me, and I couldn't sleep. A few hours later, just before dawn, it finally stopped, and I was able to sleep. Later, when everyone was awake and moving around, I complained about not getting enough sleep, and Rowena looked at me. She asked if I had heard a wailing, because she'd heard it too. It kept her from sleeping. Like me, she just laid in bed forced to listen to the wail until it finally stopped. We asked Kevin, who was in the middle bed between ours, but he'd slept right through without hearing a thing. In fact, no one else in the hut had heard what Rowena and I had. It was baffling. Rowena and I looked around outside to see if we could get a general direction of where the wailing had come from. When I saw those totems again, a thought came to my mind. Could it be that they were perimeter guardians? It seemed like whatever was making that sound couldn't get past it. I should have asked around what the totems are for, but I was too sleepy to bother and quite unnerved. The rest of the second day's activities were unremarkable, and I was able to put it out of my mind. I've read stories about wailing banshees and consider that this could be a local version of the phenomenon. But the Irish legends say the banshee warns of impending doom, and nothing bad happened afterwards.
Nothing bad has happened yet. There's always time for shit to go wrong. I was just thinking, Paul, that was the second the second story we've had recently from a country other than Ireland about something that sounds like a banshee. There was one in High Strangeness in Italy as well.
Yes. I think it's one of those things, as we've often said, that when we look at the paranormal encounters from around the world, the biggest barrier we will always have is language. And I think it's very easy to prescribe the banshee to all other kinds of cultural hauntings or wails that sometimes people can hear. And so I would not be surprised if there are variations all around the world of what is akin to a banshee. Not necessarily the same thing, but certainly it may be a warning, or it may be something that's a forewarning of events yet to come or something. So that doesn't surprise me in the slightest. But banshees, I think, are one of those things that seem to get repurposed wherever people report a certain story. And I think it takes it away from the Irish tradition and the Irish history, which is where it's firmly and correctly planted. And I think the Banshees Islands, that's where it is. And I think it's easy to prescribe one nation's paranormal history to another one, but I think we're missing out on both sides when we do things like that. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
It's a fascinating story, and I agree with you, Paul, that nearly every culture, and certain more than we give that maybe people are familiar with, have this keening tradition. And that's where the banshee comes from, is the keening women, generally women, who in Ireland, you have parts of Scotland, the Celtic countries, where you have keening at the point of death, obviously, and at, as mourners at funerals. This dates back centuries and centuries and centuries. Obviously, you have professional mourners and everything in the Roman times. The banshees in Ireland are, definitely a myth that has been adopted and expanded and sort of changed around as if it's applicable everywhere. And my intimate knowledge of the banshees is limited, but it's more that the understanding in Ireland is that, banshees are generally linked to the old families, and you'll have a banshee linked to your family, and they will follow them, and they will give the call and the cry of impending death of a family member, or maybe something bad that's happening there. But it's not just that the banshee is just walking around or floating around, and sort of anytime anyone enters Ireland that, oh, I heard a scream, something bad's going to happen, my cards are going to be declined at the shop, you know.
No, it's just doubling at 3 a.m. Something bad is happening, but that's not a banshee.
Something bad's going down. Someone is screaming somewhere. Someone is singing there. It is a very precious part of the folklore of Ireland. I am always interested in sort of the idea, if you hear a high-pitched scream or anything, is it a banshee? And does that mean that it's impending doom to you? That personally people feel like, if I'm hearing this, because it's frightening, you know, uncanny sounds, particularly high-pitched ones, they will set off a part of your brain and put you on edge. And maybe that's the closest thing you can get to, is that, you know, a spirit that's trying to warn you of something is nicer than a spirit that's trying to kill you or trying to come for you. And I also always think, you know, with keening as well, around the world, and I'm not talking about the specifics of keening in each culture, but keening is more of a release of grief. It is a release of sadness, which people are very uncomfortable with. Now, in this story, I don't think that's the case. I think it's a bit tenuous to sort of link it in with a banshee, if I'm going to be perfectly honest here. I think there's probably something much more interesting in it, but a lot of people reach for a banshee when they're not able to express or explain grief, and that's really sometimes what the banshee has become a metaphor for. It's not exactly her job, but she came from the Keening women.
Interesting. Yes. And now it's become like a shorthand. Whenever there's a paranormal story with shrieking or screaming, it's, well, it must be a banshee. It's kind of like if every time someone was yelling, a person went, oh, that's a Bren's mom.
Well, and again, to make the obvious point there, it's always women.
Of course.
It's always that if there's a high-pitched, annoying noise, you're howling like a banshee. Yeah. It's an expression. It's an expression that's passed around. If it's not that, it's a siren. Yes. Or, you know, siren that can sing, but also can be, you know, devastating to the ear. These loud, upsetting noises are always attributed to women because they're higher. And it is. And high noises do make you feel uncanny. They make you upset. They kind of put you on edge. I personally hate high screeching noises. The older I get, if that's my particular neurodiversity, I can't. Oh, God. Like, I'm more scared in horror films when a bird screeches than when someone's being stabbed. Literally, that's the thing. I can't cope with it. Like, if there's a bird out, I'm like, no, God, Jesus, I'm like out of there. Like, someone's being stabbed. Oh, that's fine.
I mean, birds are a unique horror all their own, but that's probably outside the scope of this particular conversation.
Next episode, birds. Let's say, okay, that someone's gone a banshee, maybe it's Keening there. Okay, the history of that aside. But what do we think was happening there? What are the totems for? I don't know a lot about Philippine culture, so I'm not sure if that's if something completely different.
No, I don't know either. And I know we have a number of listeners from the Philippines and in the Philippines. So folks, if you know, send us a message, ghoststoryguys@gmail.com. I know a long time ago we did a Haunting of the Philippines episode, but I don't recall that coming up. I know the stories we have had from there are pretty hairy. You know, it's pretty intense stuff, especially in the mountains. I will say, if I go somewhere and they have what appear to be protective totems outside, I'm going to be asking questions. I really want to know.
That I like.
Are these functional? You know, is this, you just had a weird day at Pier 1, or this is like, I should be worried?
It's a great way of describing. I had a weird day at Pier 1. I had a weird day at Home Bargains, honestly.
We've all been there.
We've all been there. Like, all this, I need all this Halloween stuff. This is going to like cure my illnesses. I think it's a fair point though, Brennan. Is like, if you go to somewhere and you see weird shit, would you ask? Would you ask Paul? I don't know. It's like, I would be asking questions.
If there's anyone on this call who would ask, it's Paul W. Bestel.
Exactly. I can't imagine you wouldn't.
Always. So when's the demon due? That kind of stuff. Just set me alarm.
Would you be the fellow who walks into the slaughtered lamb and just immediately, what's that star on the wall? What's all that shit going on?
That's a pentagram.
That's a pentagram.
Oh, what's going on here?
You better leave. No!
Pub full of werewolf lovers. I know what's going on here.
Yeah. Paul becomes Rorschach. You're locked in here with me.
Hey, I'm not starting any fight in a pub where Brian Glover's sat down there.
God, Jesus, no. And Rick Mail's in there as well, and he'll just flail.
Call of the Void. I was living in Cincinnati, Ohio, and on New Year's Eve of 2019, the guy I'd just started dating asked what I wanted to do to celebrate. It was like 8 p.m. or so, and I told him I wanted to see a waterfall because I'd never seen one before. So me, being impulsive and spontaneous, said, "Hey, Niagara Falls is only 7 hours away by car, and the park is open 24/7. Let's go! And we did. We arrived at Niagara Falls between 3 and 4 a.m. It was now the 1st of January, the middle of winter, so it was like 15 degrees, windy and frozen, with snow still on the ground. We parked at the first parking spot we could find in town and just followed the sound of the waterfall. To our surprise, we were literally the only 2 people in the entire park. It was the middle of the night and the middle of winter, but still, I thought surely there'd be a few of the people there, even just local teenagers. But nope, just us. I didn't even see any security or cop cars the whole time I was there. It was creepy, but also so cool. Only about half of the lamps were on along the paths and trails. They just alternated, one off, the next one on, the next one off, the next one on, and so on. I suppose to conserve power. I was also surprised that access to the river was just kind of wide open. No gates or anything unless you're actually at the designated overlook part of the falls. But if you just head back down the river a few yards, so you're technically behind the falls, and there's no gates at all along that rushing river. I thought with it being a global suicide hotspot, they'd either have more security or at least put up a gate along the river, making it less easy to just walk or slip on the ice and glide right into it. But nonetheless, we were walking along the path next to the river, away from the falls, where we were surrounded by darkness and trees, and the river was to our right. We were laughing and having a great time. For anyone who's familiar with Niagara Falls, we were walking towards the Three Sisters Island, and we were about halfway there on this barely lit path. The guy I was with had to nip out and pee, so he stayed back a little ways, peeing in the bushes. I was alone maybe 50 feet ahead on the path, under one of those lamps that was on. Then all of a sudden, and I can't explain it, I felt this sensation of swooshing taking over my body, and I was suddenly overcome with the most extreme sense of desperation and hysteria, adrenaline and being terrified, with this urge to just run and jump into the Niagara River. I felt like I was having a mental breakdown and losing my mind. I was so depressed and suicidal, and just so desperate for it to end. I was thinking of all the people I loved, but not my loved ones, just anonymous loved ones, if that makes sense. And I just felt so sorry that I was leaving them all behind. But it was the fear, adrenaline, desperation and hysteria that I felt the most. It's like my mind was on fire with the hysteria and depression, and that terrified me, and the desperation to make it end is what triggered the adrenaline and gave me that urge to jump into the water. It was the worst mental and emotional pain you can imagine. I just wish I could describe this better, but the word that comes to mind aside from hysterical was anguished. I felt the anguish, and that combined with the hysteria, the suicidal feelings, and the intense desperation made my mind feel red hot, like I had to jump into the river, that I was running from something terrifying in my own mind, and knew that the only way out was to end it all. Just imagine running into something that is so petrifying and evil that you just become hysterical from the fear and desperate to kill yourself just to get away from it. That is what it felt like. I felt so intense that even after it ended, I still felt terrified, even though in reality it probably only lasted about 5 or 10 seconds from the time of the swoosh, when the emotions took over me, to when the feelings subsided. Then, instead of my mind feeling red hot, my whole body suddenly felt ice cold, but I still felt so much fear. After it ended, I was just frozen with the fear until the light from the lamp above me made this big pop sound and suddenly went out. When the light burst, I suddenly felt like I had to run away, so I ran to the guy I was with and tried to explain what happened. I told him it felt like I was feeling the exact emotions and fear as someone who had committed suicide there, and what they had felt the moment they did it. That's the only thing I could think of. I was feeling what someone else felt right before they jumped into the river to go over the falls and die. I have my fair share of paranormal spirit encounters, all of which I try to debunk first and foremost, but that was the first and only ghost encounter I ever had, though instead of seeing the ghost, I simply felt the ghost. It definitely freaked me out, to say the least. Then, at around 6 a.m, we drove back home. Eventually, I went with my mum to Niagara Falls the following year, and nothing wild happened at all. But it was during the day.
So, funny enough, or I don't know if funny is the right word, given the subject, but no, in fact, my producer's telling me it is the wrong word. So, coincidentally, I found an article from the American Journal of Public Health that said the majority of suicides that happen at Niagara Falls actually do happen during the day, not at nighttime, typically during daylight hours, and it's usually people who live within 10 miles or less. So it's just a convenience thing, I guess. I'm not surprised the experience would be had at night because that seems to be when these things typically happen. But I thought it was interesting that mostly it happens during the day. Although they don't really seem to understand why.
Yeah, it's one of those horrendous facts that you find out about places like Niagara Falls because obviously it was recently on an episode of Expedition X where they were investigating the hauntings going on there because there are loads of hauntings reported in and around Niagara Falls and obviously you can go into it. My mum visits Niagara every time she visits Canada. They've been in the cave system that's behind the falls themselves. I
didn't know there was one.
Yeah, you can stand inside.
Okay, I'm only 3.5 hours away from there. I got to check that out.
Yeah, and I think the last count they did, it was up to 5,000 bodies that they pulled out of Niagara.
So that is the official total that I saw on Wikipedia, but I couldn't find a citation for it. Or I did, but not like a digital source. And when I checked that American Journal of Public Health, they listed in an 11-year gap or an 11-year period from, I want to say 77 to 88, it was about 140 people. So I suspect the actual number is probably lower, although it has actually been increasing over the years. But yeah, even so, I'd probably not 5,000, although that is the figure kind of bandied around. I suspect it's still too many.
Yeah, but, if that's how long a period was that?
That was 11 years.
11 years is 140. So yeah, technically 100 years you would have 1,500, roughly.
Yeah. Over the course, I would say 1,500. I would say probably 1,500 to 3,000 would be fair. I think 5,000 seems like probably exaggeration might be the wrong word, but might be a high estimate.
I think that's the kind of numbers where it would be more obvious, like you say, because the majority of them happen in the daytime. There would be more stories about seeing people do that because there was one a few years ago where someone actually caught someone just climbing over the railing and jumping off.
Yeah,
and they were just walking along the path and just went right them off.
It's often said around Niagara that unquestionably it is a place that people go to take their lives, and there's no rhyme, no reason to when people make that decision. And obviously, and we won't get into that. But there's also the phenomena of wanting to throw yourself off the falls because there are viewpoints and there's platforms, and that urge, and I think it's been written about for Niagara, and certainly in places of high points where you are right at the edge and your brain says jump. Your brain says take a step forward. Or that it doesn't, or your brain scrambles at that point. So when you should be stepping back, you go into danger. And then there's this compulsion to throw yourself over. And it seems like in that story, that's maybe what was happening to the girl. Maybe. I mean, the feelings of despair, she doesn't seem to have indicated that anything was happening. But maybe it's the adrenaline, which would make you cold afterwards. But was she up there and just kind of near that point of just your brain's going, take another step, take another step?
And I did wonder that about this story. There was obviously the terrible emotions and the terrible, sort of that feeling of not my loved ones, but loved ones. But I also wonder... Sadness, yeah. But then, I mean, Niagara Falls is a pretty fucking sad place. Like, it just straight up, it's not a...
No, I've been to Niagara Falls and visited both sides. And on the US side, I felt genuinely unsafe.
You probably were.
Yeah. No. It was just a point where it was me and my now husband, and then walking in we were there for a night to get the train into New York City, excuse me. But walk, the usual, my husband, we can walk it to the hostel, and walking through a bit where some people in 4x4s were driving real, real slow next to us and kind of looking, I'm like, we should not be walking here with massive bags of luggage. Okay,
oh God,
let's just go here and not go to that area where the hostel also got our map out and just went, this place is nice. Don't go down here.
Yeah, it's just
Okay.
just a dragon smoking a crack pipe. Yeah, we don't go there.
It was just, we were like, I don't want to go out tonight. We'll just stay in. It's fine.
Well, I drove down there when I first moved to Ontario, and I got talking to a waitress, and she was saying, "Oh yeah, we just got back from there, and we saw someone get shot in front of a bar on the Canadian side."
I remember being driven down there by my cousin, who's sort of my second cousin or one removed or anything, but family who live in Ontario. They took us down to Niagara Falls because they knew we had to get across the border, but that was our plan. And I can't remember where it was. It was obviously they took us to Niagara, right on where the waterfalls are, which is just like a Disney Marvel crazy kind of fun land. But I think there was a town we stopped nearby that was very quaint and quite pretty and very touristy. I don't know if that's Niagara on the Lake or is that a place? I might have gotten that wrong.
Might be.
But it was very cute. And then you get to Niagara Falls and you go, the waterfalls. Oh, please, I don't want to die here. You know.
Yeah, there's got the terrifying bridge literally over troubled water.
The legend of Niagara Falls is linked to the Native American people. That the original story is of a woman who did go over Niagara Falls in a canoe to avoid a marriage that she did not want to be part of.
It's very possible. I'm not. Paul, are you familiar with that story?
I have heard it, but I've not delve into it. Literally, pardon the pun.
Yeah, I think I found it here in the Treasury of Folklore, and they had a bit about the Maid of the Mist, and I'll trust them, but explaining that it was from. I'm not going to try and pronounce the indigenous people of this tribe, but again, and they have another name that is not okay as well, so you not do that. But apparently, their god Hinnon, the spirit of thunder, lives in the caves under the falls, and it was thought that god, if I'm getting this wrong, excuse me, but the girl went over the falls, was saved by the god and his minions, assistants, however they call them, and then gave the secret of why people were getting sick in the area, because there was a great snake that lived under the earth, and vanquishing the snake formed the Horseshoe Falls. Oh, interesting. Because so that's a very short version of it, of me looking through it, and it's a very short chapter in this book. But I think the legend of the spirit of the falls as well has been adapted and has been misused over the years to great offence, actually, to the indigenous people there. And kind of like, oh no, let's take the spirit of the falls and make it about white people. But yeah, there's various legends about it. When they write the book on North America, it's just gonna be like this was done mostly at great expense to the Native American people. That's what that book will be called. So it's fine. Yeah. One last thing before we move on. I thought it was interesting, if we do sort of set aside the Call of the Void stuff, this situations like this always remind me of a story Anthony told me once. And Anthony, of course, is a friend of mine. He has worked with us here on the show from time to time. He was working in Victoria, and he was cleaning. I think he was cleaning windows and sort of doing some janitorial stuff. And there was one particular building over on a part of Victoria called the Rail Yards. It was empty for a long time. Then they started building a residential neighborhood there. And Anthony is a rock solid guy. He's just not given to depression, anxiety. He's just one of God's pure creations. I don't know how he does it, but there's one particular place when he used to work there, he had to stop going there. He had to, as I recall, he had to ask his boss to send someone else because there was something about this place that would inspire deeply intrusive thoughts of self-harm in this only ever there. He would have these thoughts like, man, what am I doing? These people in my life would be better off without me, which is, of course, patently false. And he knows that. But when he was there, it was everything. Everywhere else in the city, fine. But there was something about that place. Yeah, it's nuts. No, it's fascinating. I'm fascinated by those sorts of places, and it instinctively makes me go, I'll go there to see. But what is it about? Is it frequencies? People sort of say, was it various frequencies? Is there something there that's tuned into you, kind of feeling just that level of despair? Is it a pressure thing, or has something truly awful happened there and it remembers? The romanticized ghostly side of me is kind of what has taken place there and wanting to find out. Yeah. It raises a lot of questions, and I have no answers whatsoever. I just avoid
Well, I just avoid Victoria entirely now is what I did. But I don't know if that's exactly the solution I would recommend to everyone suffering this problem. Just run away. It's fine.
Okay.
You should work for the tourist board there. Had a bad time? Leave.
Try the Yukon.
Yeah, well, okay. That could be a hard sell.
You can have your head pulled off by Sasquatch up here.
Okay, I'm listening. Unwelcome. I was jungle perch fishing at the Black Rocks Waterfalls in Mowbray, far north Queensland. To get to the waterfalls, you have to walk up the creek that eventually leads to the waterfalls, a distance of around 3 kilometers. There is no set path to take, so you find yourself walking up on both creek sides or in the actual creek itself. Plenty of rock hopping, weaving through water that's chest deep. Going up was immaculate. Caught lots of fish, recharged myself from the stress of life. It was raining, and there was no one else for the whole day in the area, apart from one family that passed me. Once I had gotten to the main waterfall, I had a bit of a rest. All was well until I started getting an unnerving feeling that something or someone was watching me. I mostly brushed this off because you do tend to get these types of feelings being alone in the bush. After my rest, I started making my way down the creek. However, the feeling didn't leave. It wasn't overwhelmingly strong, so I kept brushing it off. I decided that I would only fish the main pools that I'd had some luck in on the way up. Also, you don't catch as many perch downstream due to them mostly looking upstream for prey. After walking about 300 meters from the main waterfall, I wasn't having much luck, so I sat down on a flat spot and changed the lure on my rod. This is when it started to get very strange. As soon as I stood up, I had this unearthly smell fill my nostrils. It's something you can't describe. Personally, it felt more like an experience rather than a direct smell from something, if that makes sense. If I was going to compare it to a smell, it would be similar to that really bad smelling sweat mixed with rotting flesh/fruit and wet carpet or dog. After half a second of smelling this, I instantly went into a very confused trance. I didn't know where I was briefly and felt very confused and lightheaded. I would say this lasted for around 4 to 5 seconds, but it could have been longer as I didn't really have a sense of time during it. I remembered snapping out of the trance I was in whilst looking at my fishing rod. The instant I snapped out of it, I felt all the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Some people say this is just an expression, but this feeling was different. My upper back and neck went tingly, and I could feel my neck hair standing. This was paired with the most intense, get the fuck out of there feeling I have ever experienced. It wasn't just an instinctive, horrible feeling. It was pure doom. Like all the fear in the world was projected onto me in one single shot. I knew instantly that whatever did that did not want me there, and I knew that in my whole entire being. I was so convinced something was there that I verbally apologized for being there and said I was leaving. The trouble was, it was 2 to 3 kilometers back to my car, and moving downstream is a lot harder than upstream, so it was a very long, painful, and paranoid walk back. The whole way it felt like someone or something was following, watching me. I thought I heard a scream or a screech on 2 occasions, but it was so hard to tell with the loud rushing water. With each step I moved away from the initial spot that the experience happened, the feeling would subside. I was about 3/4 of the way back to the car, and I gained enough courage and curiosity to see if I could maybe communicate with whatever it was, or at least catch a glimpse of what was there. I stopped, turned around, and was about to walk back upstream, literally about to take my first step, when the feeling of intense doom practically punched me in the face again, but with only about 1/4 of the strength from the first time. It was like it was warning me again not to come back. With that, I accepted my fate and made my way back to the car, still shaken from what had just happened. As I was walking back to the car, the owner of the nearby property was near the entrance and about to mow his lawn. I stopped for a chat and asked him if he has had any weird experiences around the area. He looked at me with a cheeky smile and blatantly said that I wasn't the only one that has had an experience like that here. He said that around 5 times a year he will be stopped by a shaken tourist or local that has just soiled their jocks. He said around the same time last year a couple had a very similar experience to mine. He seems to think that it's around the wet season when there isn't many people on the track. He mentioned that at night he had heard what he thought were pigs screaming around his yard. He said it didn't really sound like a pig, but that's what he thought, logically. Then as he went to check for any crop/ground destruction from them in the morning, there was nothing. He also had moments when the curlews would be going off their nutters screaming. Then all the birds would fly away from the trees. Then just eerie silence. He also mentioned there have been many Yowie, Australian Bigfoot, sightings around that area. I found out later from an Aboriginal elder living in the Mowbray area that this was sacred land to the Aboriginal people, and men were not meant to go there, as it was a birthing place for women. After my experience, I had to sit in my car and collect my thoughts about what had just happened, away from the area, of course. I think I might go back there with a friend in the near future. Well, that's a guy who doesn't learn his goddamn lesson. That was terrifying, and clearly I wasn't welcome. Boy, let's go interrogate this further.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great story. Yeah, that is chilling. Full credit to the owl fella, the guy who was the guy who lived on the perimeter. When he's coming out going, I've just had a traumatizing experience. He's like, yep, that'll happen. That'll happen here. Like, where were you when I was going in? What? Why are you not warning people? What? Do you get your kicks out of this? What?
Well, I was thinking about this. Now, in every horror movies 90% of the time shot in North America, the creepy old man is at the gas station before everything bad happens. But Australia, other side of the planet, he's there after it happens. It's like the water going counterclockwise.
The Simpsons references, so many. Yeah, I get it's very good Australian energy as well, because I love the Australians, because they just be like, yep, you deal with that. Oh yeah. What do you want me to do about it? There's nothing. Yeah. Here's all the things that people have said, and do with that what you will. But yeah, the energy to go, I kind of understand it, the idea of you've walked out of there, I've been so scared, I want to go back and find out what it is. Yep. It's a stupid sort of, maybe that is the instinct to go to your death. It's the same thing. It's like leaping into the void. It's like, let's leap back into this terrifying situation.
I am certain this is the English part of you, because the English have this thing. We must push on into the darkness. We must colonize the darkness.
You'll be banning the word colony around me, mate.
That's fair. Yeah.
But it's that sort of foolhardiness of like, no, let's go, and kind of the stupidity, maybe, but also that, no, let's go. Everything will be fine. The Irish side of you will be, oh no, there's bad shit in there. Don't. But no, I reckon I'll be fine.
There might be an Englishman in there. Let's not go.
It's the constant, yeah. You'd sort of be looking at it and going, oh no, sure, it'll be fine. Oh no, there are things in there that'll kill you, but oh no, I reckon I'll be okay. Just the absolute confidence of like, well, there you are. They won't have a fight with me. But also, let's go. Woo.
I'm imagining the Yowie who's about to tear this guy's head off, just watching him come back going, really? Oh, this one's a gimme.
I did stuff with rotting meat the first time. I was doing all sorts of things. We want more. Oh. It is chilling. It's sort of, it does remind you, though, of the stories of the apex predators, which, again, I've only heard in America. And in Canada, and again, if you go on a wilderness trail, because again, in England, there's nothing. There's like, you may be set upon by a savage squirrel, but over there it is, hearing people who go on walks and nature walks, and hearing from a guy in Yosemite who talking about when he knew that there was a mountain lion and he was being stalked by a mountain lion and he saw it, and it's saying, and again, that description is like when everything goes quiet and your hair stand on the back of your neck. That is a sign your body's telling you there's an apex predator nearby, and it's like everything's gone quiet. So maybe there's an instinct, maybe there is something out there, whether it's the Yowie, whether it's something really nasty, but nature made. I don't know, something normal. I don't know what it would be, but that was stalking him, certainly feeling like he was being stalked. And that's the smell, though. What the rotten meat be? And sweat. That was very specific.
That's a pretty standard Yowie and Bigfoot thing, isn't it, Paul? The smell.
There are a couple of key things that people tend to sense. Smell is one of them. There's always this smell of, people say it's like a wet dog smell, that kind of musty smell when a dog's been out in the rain that kind of gives off, or a really pungent sort of body odour, which is obviously interesting because people were reporting that prior to primatologists discovering that gorillas do that. They've got scent glands in their chest. And so if they're agitated or they're wanting to send out a warning, gorillas do emanate a musk from them. But people were saying that in regards to Bigfoot and Sasquatch reports 20, 30 years before it was finally confirmed in in large primates. So there is biological evidence. So that's one of those things where when people say it and then science catches up 30 years later, you think, hang on, that's a bit weird, actually.
Yeah.
That is odd. I didn't know about the smell.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was just picturing someone walking along going, I can't explain this wet dog scent, and there's a tiny poodle next to them just like, please feed me.
I'm so alone.
Really puffy, really fluffy one
Naturally,
as well.
yeah.
It's just like, how can you not see me?
I'd be interested if this body of water is very similar to there is a very notorious stretch of water in northern Queensland, which is a death trap.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to think what it's called. There's three of them, and it's basically it's stunning. It's one of those places. It's beautiful. It has some certain locations in Australia around. They're just jaw-droppingly stunning. And you've got I think you've got the washing. It's called the Washing Machine, the Chute, and the Devil's Pool. And it's notorious. I think at least 20 people have died there in the last 50 years. There's been 3 since 2020, and they've got signs up saying, don't swim here, don't jump in, and people still do it. And they all seem to be recreational deaths as well. It's not like a suicide hotspot. It's just that the water churns at such a rate, and there's boulders fall down, and also people have been hit by boulders while they've been swimming and all sorts. So it'd be interesting if it's in that similar location, because I can't see there being too many haunted waterfalls in northern Queensland, because the Devil's Pool is connected with an Aboriginal legend about a woman called Ulana, and she, as we were saying about Niagara, she drowned herself in the pool to avoid marriage.
Common thread. Can't move for women throwing themselves into bodies of water to escape their marriage. Yeah. They didn't have a lot of choice.
I was going to say, yeah. I mean, I think if I'd had to marry some of the people these poor women had, I would have taken a similar route.
Yeah, it's either jump off a cliff or aqua tofana, you know.
Yeah, it's the extreme version of cake or death.
Except that your cake is also death.
Yeah, it'll just kill you slowly over the course of your life and suck any joy you might have had living inside you.
Oh no, I like those stories. Yeah, do you reckon it was a Bigfoot, or do you think it was an animal? Answer the question that's puzzled the ages just in one go.
in that particular story.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. Australia doesn't have any apex predators. This is the key apex predator in Australia is the saltwater crocodile.
Crocodile, yeah.
Yeah. They don't have any large land mammals. Obviously, Australia does have, similar to the connection with the Yowie, there are a lot of reports of people seeing black panthers in Australia, the ABCs famously, as we have here. But Australia technically has no large predator. Obviously, the largest alleged land animal that's been discovered is the kangaroo. And whilst you can get into some scrapes, and a male kangaroo can
mess you
kill
up.
you. It can kill you if it really wants to. It can certainly kill a child. Obviously they've got dangerous boars, but when you're in that kind of location, I mean, Queensland is a Yowie hotspot. It's probably ground zero in Australia, along with New South Wales, in regards to those kinds of reports. I wouldn't be surprised, because it can't be anything else, really.
Don't discount the poodle, though.
Never count out the poodle.
It's an angry dingo.
Tone. A sense of dread. My husband and I were camping with 2 friends in a pretty remote area, deep in the mountains, on the shore of a small lake. Our first morning there, I decided to paddleboard to the other side. One thing about me, I have submechanophobia, which is a fear of submerged objects in water. It doesn't affect me too badly. I love the water. But I get the heebie-jeebies when I see sunken boats, large fallen trees, massive boulders in the water, stuff like that. It's worse when I'm alone. I do pretty okay when other people are with me, and it has to be a large, clear body of water. Swimming pools, rivers, or lakes where the water isn't super clear don't bother me. So I went off by myself on my board. The lake is a big oval, so you can basically see everything from the shoreline. However, where we had set up camp, you couldn't see the whole lake, so I quickly lost sight of my husband. I started to freak out a little bit because I had immediately seen a big sunken tree. This was a high Sierra lake, so the water is crystal clear, but quickly turns black because of the depth. I told myself I was being silly and needed to get over my dumb phobia. I didn't really see anything else, but decided to stay close to shore because usually that makes me feel better. But this lake didn't really have a typical shore. It was all granite rock that just quickly and steeply drops into the water. I still didn't really see much in the water, but I was really starting to panic, which is weird. I had an overwhelming feeling that I needed to go back as fast as I could, but the rational side of me argued that I was just being dumb. I tried to deep breathe because I really wanted to get to the other side, where there was a waterfall. So I trudged on, trying to calm myself and enjoy nature. As I paddled, I began to realize how alone I was. I kept looking around, hoping to see a hiker, but I was completely by myself. As I was almost at the waterfall, I tried to push the anxious thoughts from my mind and just enjoy the gorgeous view. As I got closer, I saw there was an island, for lack of a better word, really just a large amount of granite fairly close to the shore. There was a single plastic chair sitting on the island, which was funny, but slightly unsettling because it's such a weird thing to see so deep in nature. I was still freaked out, so I figured if I got off my board and onto the island, I would feel better. Maybe my phobia wouldn't bother me if I was on land. I pulled up my board and started walking around, trying to enjoy the view, but I just couldn't. I felt terrified. The waterfall was so much louder now that I was near it, and I realized if I were to scream, no one would hear me. My husband was the only person around for miles, and he couldn't see or hear me. I kept looking around because I felt like I was being watched. I decided I couldn't take this any longer. Even if it was just my stupid, irrational fear, I had to get back as fast as I could. I got on my board and paddled down the center of the lake rather than keeping to the shore because it's quicker. It took everything in me to do it, all the while being unable to shake the feeling that I was being watched. Being in the middle of the lake, I felt vulnerable and I was shaking the whole way back. But as I got closer to the camp, relief swept through me. I got off the board and went to see my husband. He happily asked me how it was, but I couldn't talk. Instead, I just started crying. I told him I thought my stupid phobia was making me panic, even though I didn't really see anything in the water. We left later that day. Since then, I've become more open to the unknown. I was thinking about it, and it suddenly hit me that maybe something was going on, and it wasn't just my phobia, especially because I never even really saw anything that triggered it. I'm not sure if I just freaked out because I was alone, the phobia, or something else.
All right, Scooby Gang, where do we land on this? Are we team something out there, or are we team this is just your water fear thing?
Tricky. I would lean towards the phobia. I think it's sort of, I don't know, Oxus Razor and everything. Like, if you've got a phobia in front of you, is that the more rational or the likely solution that, you know, if you're out paddling on a lake, the fear has kicked in and the adrenaline's kicked in again, and you're just sort of getting the sense that you're completely in the middle of nowhere and everything did happen to you over water. Yeah, there'd be no one around to help you. So is that something supernatural, or is that just a pretty rational fear? To be fair, if you're alone on a body of water and no one can hear you, anything could happen. Maybe.
I tell you, a lot of this would be avoided if people followed my one simple rule of never going into the goddamn woods. Done.
I would suggest
this shit doesn't happen in the pub.
Coming across
no
a random person on the island would be far more terrifying, because you'd be thinking, well, how has he got here?
Yeah. Well, I thought it was interesting that she sort of found the chair there.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a thing sometimes people do where if they go out into the woods, they think, well, man, no one would ever be out here. We're way out there. Dude, you got no idea what people are doing. I mean, what is for you deep in the woods is for someone else at their backyard. You know, it's true. It's so hard. It's like when you kind of, well, for example, I like taking industrial photos of like empty spaces at night. But when people ask me, well, how do you find good places to take? And, you know, do you drive? Do you go on foot? I always say you drive. And you always scope the area out first, because I'm going to tell you right now, you might think, oh, no one's going to be over in this empty industrial part of town at 1 a.m. Well, yes, the guys over there selling drugs had the same thought. So scope it out first. Make sure you're not surprising anyone. And if you see some people hanging out in a car, find something else to do with your time.
It probably won't be fine.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think you're right. The plastic chair on the island does sound like, from another perspective, of someone who is local or something, like going, that's a lovely view. Yeah. I'm going to put this chair on the island and look at the lake and look at the scenery. It sounds idyllic.
Strangely enough, when I took Theo out for our walk this evening, one of his local little parks is like a little community park round the corner from where we are. Someone has placed an upholstered Queen Anne chair, like Queen Anne style chair, in a bush in this little park for no reason. That doesn't make sense to me, because basically the view is you've got 6 inches to a bush. So unless they're really into ladybirds, I'm not sure what's going on there.
All right, Paul, I don't want to be the one to say this, but that we're all agreeing that's a pervert's nook, right?
Well, if he is, he's very brave, because he's literally...
And classy.
Well, it is Mearsbrook.
Just there in a Queen Anne chair. just puffing away on the pipe naked. Hello, there we are.
People get really upset if they can't get any soya milk or sourdough bread around here. It's that kind of area.
Maybe there was someone around, or you could probably imagine if there was someone else on that lake or in the woods who couldn't be seen by this person on the paddleboard, and they were having a very nice day, come out with their cup of coffee or their beer or something, just looking at the scenery, and they just see one woman completely freaking out on a paddleboard and panicking and going on hyperventilating. They're going, why is she so upset? This is a lovely place, you know.
Well, as a bald tattooed man, there is not a single situation of a woman being alone somewhere in the woods that me turning up would make better for him.
Yeah.
Like if she's freaking out in the woods and I'm like, don't worry, I'm here. Don't
worry, dear.
An improvement.
Yeah, you'd be paddling away.
Like you were talking about apex predators and getting that feeling, though, earlier, Sinead. There's a sense of it could be something like that somebody could just be lurking beyond the line of sight, and that's what's caused the panic attack.
Yeah, I think it'd be perfectly reasonable if that happened, you know, because if you were, and particularly, you know, I can't imagine that situation in America or in any of the national parks or something like that, because the size of them is so huge, you know, it's inconceivable. In England, there's areas in Ireland, but I mean, even that is just pales in comparison of sort of just how massive this is and how far you could walk with no one seeing you and no chance of help and everything. And if you suddenly become aware of that while you're on a hike, you're like, oh God, you know, you'd be forgiven for completely freaking out and then feeling really scared until you get back to camp and going, okay, no, I was being rightfully freaked out, I guess. Yeah. But it seems like they were seasoned campers, I guess.
Most people I've spoke to who do a lot of hiking and spending time in the woods in North America, they've all said to me, the worst thing you can come across in the woods is someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Because you've no idea what they're doing. I mean, me and Brennan mentioned this before. There's an American podcaster and journalist, Micah Hanks, and he once told a story many years ago where he'd gone out with his partner and they'd gone for a lovely walk where they live out in the woods, and they were having a wonderful time, and they were walking around, and then all of a sudden they just saw a man pop up from behind a bush. He saw them and he popped straight back down. And Micah went, right, we're going. That would freak me out more than running across a bear or a Bigfoot.
Seeing someone else out there in an area that's not supposed to have people. Yeah.
Just hanging around in a bush.
Yeah.
Probably
in a Queen Anne chair. I brought this one from home.
You can't have it. I am selling them on Etsy.
It's beveling on the corners.
There's always a possibility the lake did have a kraken in it.
Can't rule it out.
Yeah, can't rule out a kraken. Never rule out a kraken.
On that thread, before we move on, while you were telling the story, I found the submechanophobia subreddit, where people just post pictures of shit kind of in and out of the man-made shit kind of in and out of the water. And I actually thought it was really cool until I found this picture of the lady in the lake from, I believe it's Alberta, Alabama. I've dropped it in the chat, and observe the picture and say goodbye to your sleeping hours for the rest of your life.
Oh, okay. That's not necessary. Are those her knees, her elbows?
So.
What's happening?
Horrible fleshy appendages about to rise out with suckers on. It's hard to say. But that's the Barber Marina in Alberta, Alabama. I will post a link in the show notes, folks. It is nightmare fuel. It doesn't get better. It gets worse the more you look at it. It looks like, you know those Bitmojis people send each other? It looks like one has emerged, dripping and horrific from the sea itself.
God.
Well, there's that lake in Minnesota. No, it's not a lake. It's like is it an old mine pit that's become a sort of diving spot? And there's a special effects model maker. He's put a statue of Jason Voorhees at the bottom of it.
Okay, well, that I respect.
Crosby, Minnesota, I think it is. And the pictures of it, it's incredible. He's spent a lot of work on it, but obviously some people weren't aware he put it there.
Oh, well, yeah, that would be a bad Friday.
Great
Nutty
Friday.
Putty Cave's got nothing on that.
I once interviewed the guy who does the underwater sculptures. And he does them out in the Caribbean. I think it's the Caribbean, excuse me if it's not the Caribbean Sea. Does some in sort of Lula, not now. If there's noise, it's the cat going, I've seen them too. But yeah, speaking to this architect who'd built these underwater sculptures, and they're incredible and they're really crazy. And the sort of the conversation was a bit like, this person was very privileged and this person was very, very happy with their work, as they should be. But I was like, how do you come up with this? And also just to be, I guess, that privileged and that well off to be able to go, I'm going to make underwater sculptures now. It's like, okay, well, we have rent, but no, you go ahead, pursue your dreams.
You can always tell when someone's coming from not exactly a working class background, because they'll present something like that to you and they'll be like, well, I started a business doing X. And and it's like selling the intestines of a rare animal that only exists on one private island that Jeffrey Epstein owned. We had one of my neighbors, the guy got caught fooling around on his girlfriend, and he got together with a new lady. And the landlady says, oh yeah, the new one, she makes designer handbags from old sails. Oh, how did she get old sails? Oh, her dad is part of a yacht club. Oh, okay, great, good. Cool.
Nice.
Yep. Okay. These people deserve each other.
Yoo-hoo. I'm from California, and way back when I was searching for a college, I realised that I'd likely have to go out to the East Coast if I wanted to play field hockey. My mum and I organised a road trip through Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania and Rhode Island to hit a bunch of different schools in a short amount of time. One of the schools was Ithaca College. It was a last-minute decision to stop there, so we didn't have much time to explore the general area afterwards. We'd been told by multiple people that the waterfalls in the area were beyond gorgeous and worth the stop, so my mum and I decided to swing by one before we left for Pennsylvania. We put Ithaca Falls in our rental car GPS, and it brought us to this red curb loop and an old rundown overlook of the falls. This overlook was down a hill and through some trees, so my mum didn't want to leave the car on a red curb. She encouraged me to go down and check it out on my own, and so I did. The first time I went down, I was sure to be observant of everything around me. I didn't want any randos in the woods sneaking up on me. I went to the ledge and took some pics, sat and listened to the water for a while, and then turned to go back up. When I turned, I got this odd feeling as if someone was watching me or standing with me. I got uncomfortable and looked around, but nothing appeared to be wrong. So I calmly headed back up the hill, got in the car, showed my mum the photos, and realised I didn't take a video. My mum then suggests I should go back down to get a video. We've got time. So, again, I venture out. The second time I go down, I feel a little less happy. I was down a slope so my mum couldn't see me. I felt more alone and exposed in that time before, and that sinking feeling kept growing. I go to the edge, take the video with shaking hands. Now I'm feeling like I need to get out of there. Intense sense of urgency. I turn to go back up, and some force stops me dead in my tracks. I'm frozen there like a rabbit or a deer frozen in headlights. I literally cannot get myself to move forward or take a step. An absolute, overwhelming sense of dread swept over my body and pressed onto my chest. Just such dread. I literally felt like I was going to die. I couldn't move, and I sat there terrified as I felt a massive presence come up behind me. This thing felt big and so real, and yet I can't get away. I'm still stuck and helpless. I keep standing there, too scared to turn around, unable to move, when the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It bends down towards me, and right next to my right ear says, "You-hoo." I kid you not. When I heard that, I ran faster than I ever have in my entire life. I tore up that hill, still too afraid to see what was behind me. I got in the car, slammed the door, and like a movie went, "Drive!" My mum looks at me in disbelief and goes, "Is everything okay?" I repeated, "Just drive!" She told me later that I was pale white, and that sense of urgency in my voice just told her she had to get away from whatever I was scared of. What spooks me so much about this story is that I never turned round. It felt so real that it could have been a person, but I was right against the overlook. I don't think anyone could have snuck up behind me, and I've also gotten that sense of dread visiting other haunted places. I really feel that it was something paranormal. As for the "you-hoo," it didn't sound male or female. It did sound mean, however, as if it was trying to scare me or intimidate me.
You gotta love the survival instincts of someone who hears a loved one go, "Drive," and they go, "Are you okay?" "No, clearly I'm not okay." "Emphatically not. Please drive." "Oh, we've been hit by something." "Well, okay, you had your window." "Get down. Don't yell at me." "Oh, well, now you're dead."
I love a random presence that says a very weird phrase.
It reminds me, a friend of mine once had an experience. He woke up. It was probably several years after watching The Babadook, so it's not like The Babadook was fresh in his mind or anything. But he just woke up one morning and had just a strange feeling. And this is not a guy who's into this kind of thing at all. And in his left ear, he heard a voice say, "Babadook, dook, dook, motherfucker," in a very menacing, like, "Babadook, dook, dook, motherfucker," like right in his left ear. And he just out of bed. That was the end of sleepy time for him. No explanation. I mean, it could have just been like one of those, I guess, a kind of, hypnagogic hallucination. But yikes.
Just it's the innocuous phrase, isn't it? Or just the sort of innocence of it. Of just "you-hoo, hello," like whispered in your ear from someone. Yeah, and the idea that no one could have been coming up from behind it, unless it was a very, very evil echo.
I mean, I assume most echoes are evil. Why do you need to say something twice?
Someone was like calling for help, and this person took it as something scary, and they were like, "Please."
Well, I feel like if you're going to call for help, don't sound like Bugs Bunny trying to seduce Elmer Fudd in a dress. "Yoo-hoo!" Like, no, not a great way to, "Hey, sailor, help." Just say help.
Unless they were just very, very polite, or they weren't sure how to start the conversation. I don't want to trouble you. I'm a nice, maybe they're just like, I know this is an inconvenience. "Yoo-hoo, if you wouldn't mind, my leg is fully broken. But if you have time."
I know. As a man, it is expected that women do our emotional labor, and I don't want to put that on you. But I am actively being eaten by wolves. If you wouldn't mind, I would appreciate. Shoot me now, put me out of my misery, because this is very painful.
Yeah.
But start off with "yoo-hoo." Yeah, definitely.
Yoo-hoo. I'd like to make a land acknowledgement before I beg you to put me out of my misery.
It's like Gary in The Thing, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
"I know you guys have been through a lot, but I don't want to spend the rest of this winter tied to this fucking couch." Ithaca Falls has got is renowned because it's got one of the most frightening signs that welcomes you there, because it basically says, "Welcome to Ithaca Falls," and then next to it there's a big sign that says, "Many people have died swimming here."
Jesus Christ. I'm going to get one of those for my door.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's another location where people go swimming where they're not supposed to and drown.
But again, have a warning. Don't swim here. You may die. Not just conversationally. Many people have died swimming here, like it's Star Wars, and you're explaining that many Bothans have died.
It's
to bring you this information.
Very passive voice.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, many people have died here, but you could be the one who's lucky.
Now you're talking like an American. Are you the next winner on Who Wants to Drown in Ithaca Falls?
That sounds like a challenge to me.
That was someone phoning a friend.
Yeah. Love it.
I actually found, not me, Luke. Luke found the stories for this episode. He found another story that involved Yoo-hoo, which I just thought I'd share here real quick before we move on. So this person says, I was in my car with my husband. It was pitch dark out and had been raining, so we were playing a game we refer to as frog dodging. We're from Kentucky, forgive me. Wherein we follow a specific road after heavy rain because it brings out all the frogs and toads, and then we swerve around to avoid hitting them. That is monstrous. I hope these people are eaten by wolves.
Or toads.
Or toads. That'd be great. Like that Stephen King story where they got teeth. I'm into it.
No, they're driving to avoid them, not to run them over, aren't they?
Yeah, but
you're going to have some collateral damage.
That's it. And they go to the road to do this. It's not like, oh, this is part of our commute. They're like, hey, do you want to go possibly end the lives of some animals today? Which is a very Kentucky statement.
Perhaps they've also sat through frogs, Brennan, and they've just turned them against amphibians in general.
I thought the frogs was a lot of fun. I wish they would run over some blood-sucking pharaohs in Pittsburgh. The rain brings out all the pharaohs in Pittsburgh. And sorry, Sinead, that's
to my yard.
Yeah.
That's fine.
We used to do a movie show for patrons. Like we would watch a movie together.
Yeah.
And the worst one we ever watched, the one that killed the whole thing, was called Blood-Sucking Pharaohs in Pittsburgh. It was indescribable. Yeah. Anyways, but back to random murder in Kentucky. So this person says, occasionally there will be one positioned too precariously to miss, so I'll get out of the car and move it into the grass before we go on. Yeah, nice try. On this particular...
Such a good guy.
Yeah, I'm not buying that. You're first against the wall when the frogs take over. On this particular night, I was doing just that. There was a large bumpy toad making his kamikaze intent perfectly. Kamikaze, you're the one on the road. And sorry, getting distracted.
He's making a lot of statements about how he is trying to save the frogs and the toads. He's going out of his way. It's like, what was really happening there? Were you in a car or were you just walking down the road with a shovel?
Yeah, right. Or even if you were in the car, like, boy, I'm going to go and solve this problem I caused. Great, I guess.
Oh, this frog just like hurled itself in there. It's like it wants to die. Well, you're giving it an option.
Yeah. Well, but the poor guy's going to get run over because you're there, you stupid bastard. This is like Tony Stark making Ultron. Like if we hadn't made Ultron, we would not have a problem, big guy. This is you gotta look into your soul on this one. Anyways, I'm just gonna finish this story here. So they're moving toads. They're committing toadicide. They pick them up. They move it, and then from the woods, but close enough they should have been able to make out the silhouette of a person moving, where there was nothing but darkness. They heard, "Yoo-hoo." My husband said that in the 12 years he'd known me, he had never once seen such sheer, unadulterated terror on my face. When I got back in the car, he naturally asked what was wrong, and all I could bring myself to say was, go. Just drive. And to his credit, he did.
Over the frogs.
Again, yep.
Again. It's like suddenly, they'll screw them. That's fine. There's a guy in the woods.
We built you some trains. What are you so mad at us for?
Yeah, that is creepy. Yeah. I once was walking in Canterbury, and it's one of those things where, when something uncanny happens and you find the rational explanation, and then you go, if I had decided to take this another way, this could have been a spooky story that I told. But I was walking, and this was, it was a footpath, it's not far from how, there are houses around, it's near a leisure centre and stuff, but a bit of undergrowth, and, you walk on little bits of footpath. And there was this really overgrown area, and I started walking, and I heard this meow, meow sound. I was like, now, I don't know if these people knew me personally and knew that I would do anything for a cat, but I sort of go, but that's clearly not a cat. It's a human making a cat noise from the undergrowth and from this thicket.
I don't
and
love
just
it.
sort of going, right, okay. And then but they made the sound again. I was like, it's definitely not a cat. And I was like, what the fuck? And sort of just stepped around and thought, I'm going to see what's going on. And again, like I knew where my exit route was. I was okay. It was daytime as well. It was light.
Oh, okay.
And then, yeah, if it was in the dark, I'd been running full pelt, absolutely. Throwing children behind me, it would be fine.
That's it.
But then sort of looked around, and there were just two fellas in the undergrowth there. I don't know what they were doing there. I don't know. They were sort of whispering to each other, and I sort of looked and just kind of scoffed and went, for fuck's sake, and then kind of walked away. And then one of them sort of called out going, at least you stopped.
What?
Hey?
And I was like, as if, I took that as in, wasn't it nice that you stopped to check if there was an injured cat? But it's just us weird people standing in the undergrowth making cat noises. And I then texted a friend who's on the police force, and I was just like, okay, let's send the car down there and something like that. And like immediately like texted some people saying, I'm fine, but by the way, this is just freaking weird.
Was there a Queen Anne chair?
There wasn't a Queen Anne chair. There was a full credenza.
Oh, well, those are weirdos.
Yeah, it was. That was what made me think this isn't right. This is right. A chair would be fine, but no, this is going too far. But it's a creepy thing, as in it's not. I could see what the source was, but then it turned into a whole other creepy thing where I'm going, what if that had been a schoolgirl or a school of any gender? Like if anyone had been walking along and then they'd gone, oh, is it a little kitten? And is this some people just standing there trying to lure people into the bushes and going, but just a weird response as well, and weird noise. And I was just like, what the fuck are you doing?
At least you stopped. What? Well, people don't want to help each other anymore. What the fuck are you talking about, Lurker?
Why the
Standing there polishing his knives.
Yeah.
The community spirit is alive and well. Also, get in the sack.
It's like that, is it Patton Oswalt did that bit about walking his dog in New York City? And he took it all the way down to this stairs, bottom of the subway stairs, so the dog could do its thing because it was kind of nervous with all the noise. And while the dog was mid-poop, he looked up and he saw this one homeless guy blowing another. And the homeless guy who was on his knees looked over at the dog taking a crap and went, nice. Okay.
Levels. There's levels there, isn't there?
For God's sake, this is to be a family subway.
There goes the neighborhood.
There goes the neighborhood.
Our last story for tonight is called Push. Over the summer, me, my mom, and a couple friends all went to Sturgis, South Dakota, because my mom took an assignment there. We stayed there for an entire summer and a bit of the school year. My mom rented a house with a roommate, while me and my 3 friends all lived in a house down the street from my mom's. We were too loud and stayed up all night, so they rented out our own separate house for us. A few months passed and things were pretty good in South Dakota. The people were all nice, the nature was breathtaking, and there were nothing but positive vibes. That all took a very dramatic turn one day when Mom and her friend were eating lunch at a world-famous bar and grill located in Sturgis. My friends and I decided to drive 30 minutes away to Rapid City to go shopping, since we had just gotten our allowances and one of us was old enough to drive. Since it was only our second time in Rapid City, once we were finished shopping, we decided to go exploring. We left the mall and drove around for an hour or so until we found a beautiful waterfall hidden behind a bunch of trees and boulders. We ended up hiking around the waterfall to take more pictures. One of my friends decided that she wanted to explore on her own to take more shots for Instagram, so she wandered off. My other friend, the one who drove us there, and I were still taking pictures and bragging about our view on Snapchat when we heard a blood-curdling scream coming from the opposite end of the waterfall. Worried our friend was in trouble, we ran toward the sound and found her in the water, but she didn't say a single word. Instead, she just pointed towards a copse of trees. We both looked in the direction she was pointing and saw a black figure. Couldn't make out what it was, but they swore up and down it wasn't human or alive, even if it did have the body of a little girl. Its face, however, was completely black. As soon as I saw the figure, I ran down the hill to help my friend up and over the railing, and we all ran back to the car. Later that night, I decided to ask her what happened and how she managed to fall over the railing, down the hill and into the river. She told me she was leaning over the railing to get photos of the river when all of a sudden she felt someone tap her on her back. She thought it was either me or our friend and didn't think much of it, so she proceeded to keep taking pictures, when all of a sudden she felt someone forcefully push her over the railing. She went tumbling down the hill and into the river, and thank God it wasn't that fast or she would have drowned or gotten swept away. She said she looked up to see what had pushed her, and it was the figure of a little girl, but she couldn't see the face or anything because it was completely black. So she stood up and started screaming at the girl, which I couldn't hear because we were on the other side of the waterfall. These were her exact words. I stood up to ask the thing that pushed me why it did that, when all of a sudden it came flying at my face. Literally flying. I fell back down and started crying for you guys. I don't know what that thing was, but I know it was not human.
And it's unsettling.
I think this should happen to all people who clog up trails to take photos for the gram. I know that in Italy, you've probably heard this, they're having issues with influencers taking up a lot of space in the Cinque Terre.
Yeah.
And I just think the Italians just need to conjure some, what sounds like dementors, basically, and just set them loose and save ourselves a whole lot of trouble.
Yeah, over-tourism is a massive problem in lots of places, like in Barcelona and everything, where they're literally throwing stuff at tourists and saying, go home, please, just leave us alone, and all these places. But yeah, if you're taking nice pictures, but if you're doing it for the gram, maybe that was someone who was just really fed up with someone, not enjoying the experience, but living through the camera lens. But or I don't know, is it a black-eyed kid? I mean, that's an entire black head.
Kind of like a shadow person or a shadow kid. I don't know. Anything that takes the form of a kid is terrifying. I
mean, it's nice that the person again turned around and having been shoved. Why did you do that? What were you going to expect? What were you expecting was the best that was going to come out of that conversation? I do love that. This is a monster with the body of a child and a face of nightmares. I think I'm going to tell it to go fuck itself. That's what I'm going to do. That might be the secret to it.
South Dakota, I know some people have reported even just crossing the border into South Dakota makes them feel a bit disturbed and unnerved, and they're not sure why. Even if they've visited it several times, they've just said it's if you hit it at the right part of the year at the right time, it just gives you a completely different vibe. So who knows? It's one of those states that we don't hear a lot about South Dakota, similarly to North Dakota, I think, because they are essentially very barren towns with sporadic settlements here, there, and everywhere. It's not the most populated of states, are they, both of them? So it may be, as with anything, where there's space, something often moves in.
Yeah. And if it was like a hidden place, as they describe it, which does raise the question how they found it in the first place. But if it was a hidden place, then yeah, this thing could be used to having it to itself. You know, we've had many stories. Hell, I've had my own encounters with things that were not expecting company and were not particularly happy to have it.
Yeah, maybe she was standing in her spot.
Yeah. I just love the tap on the back. Like, oh, I'm totally alone out here in the woods. Something tapped me on the back.
Excuse me.
I'm sure they tried being nice. It's like me at Costco. I tried being nice.
Could you? Okay, well, I warned you once.
Yep.
Go on, get.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, these. Yeah. Get to fuck or something. But if they're in those really secluded areas, you're like, oh, it's so beautiful. It's like, why is it so quiet? Why isn't anyone else here? Why hasn't anyone found it? It's like, yeah, there's sometimes if you're unsettled of being there, it's going that's something else's home.
Yeah.
Whether it is an animal or whether it is something much older. Or something that just doesn't want you to be there. These very weird places that are isolated and beautiful, but they don't want people there. That's why they stay beautiful, probably, because they don't have people traipsing through.
I was thinking that, like, no one's put a 7-Eleven here. There's probably a reason.
Yeah.
What are these totems hanging off this fence for?
They're pointed towards this Bestel guy, and he can't get in now.
Love it.
And we come full circle. Well,
Indeed.
this has been our Waterfalls story episode. And Sinead, it has been so awesome having you here. Thanks so much for coming on. Come back as many times as you want, as much as you want. You're always welcome here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute delight. It's been great sharing the stories and having a chat and catching up. And yes, very happy to come back and we'll do some sort of mashup with the Poisoner's Cabinet as well, where we can talk about poison and murder and crazy crimes.
Yes, I'm very disappointed we didn't get round to talking about my favourite British poisoner, Graham Young.
Oh, yes, the teacup poisoner.
Yes.
Who is, his story is wild. It's just so... so good and so wild, and one of those where you go, twice it was okay, you let him out once, what the hell, it's absolutely full of fodder and very disturbing as well.
He's the very embodiment of a ticking time bomb.
Indeed. Thallium.
On the off chance our folks don't already know where to find you, where can they look for you online?
You can find The Poisoner's Cabinet wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Spotify, Apple, iTunes. We have a website, www.thepoisonerscabinet.com, where you can not only search for our episodes, but you can build your own cocktails on there. A new feature we've just installed. You can also find us on Instagram. We're on TikTok as well. I personally also have a TikTok account that talks about horror books and horror movies. Sinead Hanna Crack, as in crack as CRAIC, the Irish way. But yeah, that's where I talk about all spooky things for me.
Very
but
cool.
The Poisoner's Cabinet is wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again. And folks, definitely, if you're not listening to The Poisoner's Cabinet already, you're missing out. Check it out as soon as you can. Hey there, listeners. Before you reach for that skip 15 seconds ahead button, I promise you this isn't an ad. We wanted to take a minute to talk to you about mental health. On this show, I've always tried to be as honest and open as possible about my struggles with depression and anxiety, because even though we've come a long way towards acknowledging the very real damage these things can do, there is still way too much lingering stigma about reaching out for help. And when you start to feel like there's no help, it's easy to start feeling like there's no hope. But Paul has joined me today to remind you there is always hope and there's always help.
We're not going to try and talk you out of self-harming right now, because we know that's not how it works. Instead, what we wanted to do was tell you something now and hope that should things get bad, you'll remember it and make a phone call or send a text message before you make any permanent decisions. As someone who knows all too well just how important mental health can be, it's never too late to reach out.
In Canada, the number to call is 133-456-4566. In the USA, the new number to call is 988. That's 988.
In the UK, the number to call is 116123 or text SHOUT, that's SHOUT, to 85258. In Australia, the number to call is 131114.
However bad shit seems, it will pass. And no matter what your brain might be telling you at any given moment, and believe me when I say I know this intimately, there are people who love you and people who care deeply about how you treat yourself. Should a time come when you find yourself despairing, please know that we've both been where you are, and there is a way back to the world. Take care. Welcome back. Thanks again to Sinead Hanna from The Poisoner's Cabinet for hanging out with us. If you want to check out The Poisoner's Cabinet, which I recommend you do, you can find it on podcast platforms everywhere or by checking the links in the show notes. And really, check out that new Poisoner's Cabinet website, man. It is so cool. They just did a hell of a job.
It's fabulous.
The Ghost Story guys are Luke Greensmith, who helps find our stories. He's also host of the Luke Lore podcast, available everywhere you get your podcasts. Tanya Downing, who manages our Facebook community. She's also co-host of the podcast Streaming into Madness with Walter Whitaker. Sarah Kent manages our Reddit community. Joseph Camo manages our YouTube account and is host of the Sociology Professor YouTube channel.
Our paranormal conductor is the marvellous Mr. Brennan Storr.
And of course, my friend and co-host, the one, the only, the inimitable Paul Bestel, the paranormal Johnny Carson himself, host of Mysteries and Monsters. Paul, what's coming up on M&M?
I'm going on the search for the Clovis people in the company of the marvellous Jason Pentrow. So we're diving into this very odd aspect of North American archaeology that's less than 100 years old since they were first discovered. And so Jason very kindly joins me to talk through some of his research and his work through the Seven Ages archaeological group and podcast that he presents alongside Mike Hanks. And it's a fascinating conversation because I love this strange history to America of who was there before the current indigenous populations. And that, I think, is a fascinating thing because you presume, as with most migrations, that they've come from the north. But the evidence seems to suggest that they came from the east. So if they've come from the east, where did they come from? Because nobody was travelling the world at that point, allegedly.
Oh, fascinating. Well, I cannot wait to hear that. And where can everyone find you online?
You can find Mysteries and Monsters across all social media platforms, especially as I've rediscovered Threads. and all podcast platforms.
Amazing. I'm Larger the Truth on Threads, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Letterboxd. You can find my horror movie show, Weird Together, everywhere fine podcasts live. As we said at the top of the show, we couldn't do this without our patrons, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube subscribers, so we'd like to thank every single one of them. Those fine folks get bonus shows, extra conversations between me and Paul, paranormal articles read by me, as well as our monthly live show, and a whole lot more. You also get access to our vault, which is at this point 4 years worth of content and is substantial. You're talking probably dozens of hours of material just waiting for you when you sign up at patreon.com/ghoststoryguys. Again, that's patreon.com/ghoststoryguys, or by signing up to GSG Premium via Apple Podcasts and YouTube. And of course, if you sign up at the $20 level and above, well then, my friend, you get to be part of an elite club. A very special little organization, little something we like to call Ghost Force. That's right. Everyone who subscribes at the $20 level and above becomes part of Ghost Force. This time around, the members of Ghost Force are...
Ethan Saragon,
Brett wears a pink tutu.
Cackling Sky,
Crazy Mom.
CT,
Flowy Two Hats.
Hannah Brown,
Hannah Siemens.
Hilary Desasua,
Jade Moores.
Janani Banani,
Never gets old. Jason R. Slaughter.
Jennifer Mullen,
Joseph Como.
Malevolent Clamato.
I feel like I should. Mara Noriega.
We are channeling the spirit in Boris Karloff.
Yeah.
Mark Semler.
Megan Rocket. It's gonna be completely out of time with the music. I don't even care. I'm into it. Let's do this shit.
Ooh, yes. Merlin Hansen.
Nicola.
Peter Gunn 08.5.
Rebecca Bring. See, we're doing the voice we were warning Sinead about earlier.
Renpet.
Robin Tien.
Rocking Ronnie Shenanigans.
Scrapbot 13.
Shannon Steyer.
Gotta finish it this way. Trent Cannon. You are the few. You are the spooky. You are Ghost Force. For real, guys. Again, we love and appreciate all our subscribers, but Ghost Force, you guys are especially nuts, and we love you for it. So thank you. And if you want to have your name read out in that increasingly unhinged part of the show, head to patreon.com/ghoststoryguys or sign up on YouTube. Unfortunately, the Ghost Force tier is not available on Apple. It's just because they don't have multiple tiers, or at least they didn't when I set it up. But YouTube and Patreon both allow for that functionality. So again, if you want your name read out there, and we all know you do, head to patreon.com/ghoststoryguys or sign up to GSG Premium via YouTube. Paul, my friend, do you have any appearances coming up?
I've got a couple that are due to be confirmed in the next few weeks. One's on a true crime podcast and one's on a paranormal podcast, but I have no definitive dates as yet. But obviously we've just hit the airwaves on the TV trivia show that we did together, where I showed once again an unhealthy obsession with a particular film from the 1980s.
I think it is a perfectly healthy and normal obsession. But yes, we were invited back onto the TV trivia podcast with our good friend Brian Sheehan to answer trivia about James Cameron's really legendary 1986 film, Aliens. You'll find that...
Game over, man!
Exactly. And we did... But although it wasn't game over for us, we did okay. But you did okay. You saved my ass.
Yes, I watched it the other day, again.
So good, man. So good. You can find that and all of our other appearances and other shows at ghoststoryguys.com. You'll find a link in the blog. We have a section there for guest appearances. And I will be appearing on an upcoming episode of the Ghost Furnace podcast. Should be recording that tomorrow. So once that goes, I will post it up there as well, along with Paul's appearances, of course. If you want to pick up some Ghost Story Guys merch, head to our website at ghoststoryguys.com. You can find all kinds of cool stuff there. You have some stickers, t-shirts, mugs, all kinds of cool gear. And again, you find all of that at ghoststoryguys.com. Shout out to our composer, Rainy Days for Ghosts. Rainy Days for Ghosts is a project of film journalist and musician Harper Smith. You can find more of Harper's work by heading to rainydaysforghosts.bandcamp.com or by searching for Rainy Days for Ghosts everywhere you get your tunes. Our theme song, Radio, Into the Darkness We Go, is composed and performed by Peter Kursov of Pizzanta Music. Find more from him by searching for Pizzanta Music wherever you get your music. And I guess that's going to do it.
We'll be back next week, but until then,
Into the darkness we go.
One of my 3 drinks.
So we've not even asked you what you're drinking, Sinead. That's one of your go-tos.
I have 3 drinks. I have water for the throat. I have Diet Coke for the energy. And I have a concoction that I've mixed up, which is a bit like a mezcal margarita.
Amazing.
But I have, because you've just bought some mezcal. I know you're a mezcal fan. And I had some, and I made that up. But I did a splash of maraschino liqueur in it because I was running low of triple sec. And I thought that'll give it enough of a tiny bit of sweetness and floral against the smokiness. That is the bullshit story that I will sell. At the end of the day, it's liquor and it tastes good.
Amen to that.
That's all that matters.
Some conversations only make sense after the sun has set, and this is most definitely a fucking truck going past. Let's try that again.
I'm waiting for the 9 o'clock drug firework to go off around here.
That'd be more interesting than this. It's just a shitty Springsteen song. This is later era Springsteen playing out outside my window. Anyways. All right, we're coming back for an edit where we somehow came around to a joke about Dirty Harry as a wizard. I'm not sure. There was a noise. It's an edit regardless. But, so... don't you know the format intimately?
What do I do?
Come on, man. Jesus.
Sinead, it's time for some improv. Let's get with it. Go. Give us your jazz hands, baby.
Sometimes I feel things... This funny story. My mother never loved me. Wait, no.
The Ghost Story Guys are Luke Greensmith. After that's me. I have to say things now. Jesus Christ. Oof. Yikes.
You sure you don't want to alternate it?
Oh, don't even say it on air because the fear that you have at night that someone's going to splice that together and you're like, no, the AI will find you.
Move on to the next story. I had someone ask me the other day, they said, so what's Paul like? Because he seems like really easygoing. And I'm like, no, Paul's totally easygoing. But I would never want to piss him off.
Which they just alternated. I can't even say alternate. Alternated? Oh, fucking hell, my brain's gone there. We're nearly... Just laughing about the last word that terrified me many months ago.
Yeah, this is going in the outtakes, so enjoy that. Enjoy your new alternated t-shirt that will be coming soon.
Alternated. It's a strange word. We don't speak like that here.